from earning the trust of millions of players, only to backstab their entire fan base. These are Roblox games that betrayed their community, starting with the game behind Roblox's darkest betrayal, Forsaken. Released on December 25th, 2024, Forsaken is an asymmetrical horror with a unique survival concept based on Roblox history and lore, where players can choose to be either a survivor or a killer. For a while, it looked like Forsaken could have been remembered as one of Roblox's greatest horror games, but instead of being remembered for its gameplay, Forsaken is remembered for the betrayal of the very people behind the game, because at the center of it all was soul-driven love, Forsaken's original owner. Players once trusted him to deliver a horror game worthy of Roblox history, but in 2025, that trust was completely shattered, as he was allegedly exposed for manipulating people in the community, blackmailing others with personal information, and sharing highly inappropriate content in Discord servers, along with many further disturbing allegations that destroyed his reputation. But these accusations were only the beginning, because as soon as Forsaken blew up, Soul was caught red-handed, misusing the funds the game generated. Instead of reinvesting that money back into improving Forsaken, evidence showed he was spending the game's revenue on people linked to serious crimes. For players who had invested hours and money into the game, this was a huge betrayal, because their support wasn't making the game better, it was being wasted. After massive backlash, Soul didn't even take accountability. When people told him to step down as the owner, he tried to secretly sell Forsaken behind his own development team's back for around $1.5 million. Legal action eventually reversed the deal, but it showed just how far he was willing to go and how little loyalty he had to the very people who trusted him. It wasn't until Soul was finally forced to hand Forsaken to new owners that it seemed like the game could truly move on. But the betrayal didn't stop there. In late September 2025, leaks revealed that Soul was still receiving 25% of Forsaken's revenue. Players later found out that this was part of the deal when he sold the game, to prevent him from selling the game to a bigger company for more money. For players, this felt like another backstab. The money they thought was supporting the new team was still flowing into Soul's pocket. And if that wasn't enough, Soul still wasn't finished, because every few months, Soul would sneak back into Roblox with new alt accounts, trying to rejoin the community in secret. But each time players caught him, and instead of taking responsibility, he mocked them by changing his display name to GG, treating the entire situation like a joke. For many fans who once believed in Forsaken, this felt like the biggest backstab possible, as the person who created the game was now the one destroying Forsaken's reputation. But while Forsaken showed how developer actions can destroy a game's legacy, our next game on the list betrayed the most loyal community. Developed by Sneak Tricks, Bed Wars is a Minecraft-inspired survival game in which players spawn on an island, where they have to fight to protect their bed while trying to destroy others. The game went down as one of the most influential games in Roblox history. At its peak, it pulled over 400,000 concurrent players and became a global sensation. The early days were the golden age with iconic kits like Archer and Barbarian, which made every match exciting. Up until this point, Bed Wars wasn't just popular, it felt like Roblox itself was alive again. But it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows, because by early 2022, cracks began to show. Updates became predictable with new kits and recycled game modes. Pay-to-win kits were locked behind Roblox walls, giving unfair advantage to anyone willing to pay. Suddenly, matches weren't about skill anymore, and free-to-play players were getting stomped. For many, this was the moment the trust began to break. By late 2022, things only got worse. A vending machine mechanic was introduced that let people gamble emeralds for random items. On top of that, fan favorite kits like Jade and Void Region got nerfed to the ground. Overnight, people's favorite playstyles were ruined. For the first time, players weren't just disappointed, they felt like the developers didn't care about the community. In 2023, there was a brief comeback, once again peaking at over 400,000 players. But the hype didn't last long, as later updates became repetitive, beloved items like balloons were controversially removed, and new competitors like Playball and Rivals started stealing their spotlight. But to make matters worse, the YouTubers who carried Bed Wars began leaving too. Even Tanker, the face of the game, moved away, and when the YouTubers left, the game was set in stone. By late 2024, Bed Wars had fallen from averaging 200,000 players to barely 20,000. During this decline, the developers introduced a major change, where kits were removed from battle passes and had to be purchased directly. which killed the game and took away one of the last reasons to keep grinding. By early 2024, the problems only deepened. Instead of fresh content, the game began recycling old maps and kits rather than adding anything new. Today, Bed Wars is a shadow of its former self. Many fans felt like the game had lost its soul. As one player put it, Bed Wars used to be Roblox's best PvP game, but pay-to-win kits and lazy updates betrayed the whole community. While Bed Wars broke the trust by leaving players behind, the next game took betrayal way too far. However, after all this betrayal, at least you can stay loyal by subscribing to the channel. Released on December 1st, 2023, Pet Simulator 99 was the third sequel in the Pet Simulator franchise, which instantly became one of the biggest games Roblox had ever seen. The premise was simple but addictive, with the goal being to collect coins and unlock worlds to progress. For a while, the game was everywhere, pulling massive numbers and dominating the platform. But behind the shiny pets and colorful eggs was Big Games, a studio that was once led by Preston, a developer notorious for his greed. It didn't take long for players to realize this game was built to generate profit. With limited eggs that felt like gambling, overpriced game passes, and updates that pressured players to spend before the items were gone forever. This was all part of Big Game's strategy. Preston even went as far as copying other games, because when Grow a Garden exploded as one of Roblox's biggest hits, Big Games quickly dropped a new update inside Pet Simulator 99 called Grow an Egg. On Twitter, players unleashed their anger, with one brutal reply stating, "You guys can grow anything but a good game. And with all that money, you still couldn't come up with an original idea." People weren't just disappointed anymore, they were furious. However, despite all this, the situation only escalated when RTC, a popular Roblox news reporter, revealed that Preston had officially abandoned Big Games. And when players demanded answers, Preston's response left the community even more frustrated, with him stating, "We moved on. Roblox stopped showing our games to people. Too expensive to run." For fans who had spent years, and in some cases thousands of dollars, they had just felt betrayed. After Preston draining the community with microtransactions, overpriced plushies, and endless pay-to-win mechanics, he had just walked away from the game entirely. As one frustrated player stated, "Are you kidding me? You just threw away your long-time loyal Pet Simulator fans. Some of them invested thousands of dollars into the game, and all we get is 14 words in a Twitter post? Outrageous, you should be ashamed of yourself." But the backlash only grew when players began speculating that Preston hadn't left Roblox at all, but had quietly moved on to work with Do Big Studios, a company that is infamous for buying up Roblox's biggest hits and destroying them with the same cash grab tactics that Big Games use. But while Pet Simulator 99 showed how greed can kill a game, the next game on the list takes betrayal to a whole new level. Developed by a team at Deep Woken staff, Deep Woken instantly stood out as one of the greatest Roblox RPGs ever made. It even went on to win the Bloxy Award for Best New Experience, cementing itself as a masterpiece. At its peak, Deep Woken was praised for being brutally difficult yet rewarding, with permadeath parry-based combat and a progression system that punished mistakes. It quickly gained a reputation as Roblox's hardcore game, but over time, things began to change. When the community asked for new content, such as fresh islands to explore after being stuck with the same map for 2 years, the developers completely ignored that feedback and decided to rework the movement system instead. But when the new movement update was released, it ended up breaking the game, messing with nearly every core mechanic. Bosses became bugged, dungeons were unplayable, and even console players lost basic functions like jumping. This disaster introduced a confirmed list of 48 bugs, turning the game that once felt polished into a broken mess. However, the issues didn't stop there. New weapon types were added but never fully developed. Meanwhile, countless bugs piled up, and the once polished combat system turned into a cluttered mess. As the game broke down, so did the community. Deep Woken became infamous for its toxicity. New players were teamed up the moment they spawned, and PvP turned into constant grinding. As one player pointed out, everyone begged for new content. Instead, they gave us broken mechanics no one asked for. The consequences were obvious. Deep Woken's player count crashed to record lows, dropping to 1.4 thousand concurrent players at one point, which was shocking for a game that once stood out as Roblox's proudest RPG. While Deep Woken's backstab shook the entire community, the next game is remembered for the biggest betrayal in Roblox history. Released in 2022, The Strongest Battlegrounds is a Roblox fighting game where players can choose characters and battle in public servers. It became the king of Roblox's entire battleground genre. The format was so addictive that it would inspire dozens of copycat games. games. By late 2024, the game had reached historic heights during the release of a character known as KJ, one of the most hyped updates ever, as the strongest battlegrounds pulled in over 1.4 million concurrent players, making it the most played game on Roblox that day. For a moment, it seemed like the game was unstoppable, but what looked like the start of its golden age was actually the beginning of its downfall, because the KJ update that pushed TSB to its peak was marketed as a limited time reward that was meant to disappear after a month. But the developers kept extending him until he became permanent. To make matters worse, the developers had set up a system where whoever donates the most money got to use KJ first. Players paid for what they thought was early access, only to be betrayed when the character was later made available to everyone. This is when everything started to fall apart. As the developers started breaking promises, updates came slower and slower, and loyal players were left in silence. What was once Roblox's most consistent fighting game became a symbol of neglect, as Santino, the lead developer, promised to bring back bi-weekly updates, which was the same consistency that built TSB's reputation in its early years. Characters that once took weeks to create now dragged on for 6 to 7 months. Entire features like mastery, new maps, and reworks were teased but never released. All fans could do was stare at sneak peeks, while real updates never came. Meanwhile, other Battleground games were doing the exact opposite. Their developers pushed consistent updates, interacted with their communities, and even delivered high-quality characters on time. Even Blox Fruits, a game that is infamous for its delays, was updating faster than TSB. Many fans believed the game that once led an entire genre was falling behind. Months later, Santino announced that he had fractured his hand, but by then, the damage had already been done, as the community had already gone 3 months without updates or communication. And even after the announcement, the silence continued. To many fans, the hand injury felt like an excuse. The consequences were impossible to ignore. From a peak of 1.4 million plays in December 2024, TSB dropped to around 80,000 concurrent players, which was still large, but nowhere near the powerhouse it used to be. And for a game built on fast-paced battles and constant content, the silence was crushing. As one player put it, TSB used to update every week. Now we wait months to get nothing. It feels like the developers just stopped caring. For fans, this wasn't just disappointing, it was a backstab. The strongest battlegrounds could have been remembered as Roblox's greatest fighting game, but while TSB showed how silence can shatter the trust of their most loyal fans, betrayals on Roblox doesn't just come from games. Many YouTubers have also turned on their community. If you want to see how the biggest YouTubers betray their fans, click this video on screen to find out. Watch it.